Well, I must say, I think Marty put his finger on what was central, what has been central, is issues of human rights, whether in America, in the civil rights times, or in the communist world, or in the right-wing world. And as Isaiah Berlin said, it's a question of people who have some idea that you can sacrifice a lot of people in order to achieve something, or people who say, no, each person has some value. I think that the political issues in the review that we've dealt with have been more or less on that level. For example, you have Mark Danner talking about torture. Now, maybe we never presented the case for torture. We never would have occurred to us. In that sense, there is a constant drumbeat about people being harassed, bullied, threatened, killed, and unable to assert their interests, their rights, their views. And in our first regular issue, we had a man who went to Cuba. He said, well, there's no question this is a nationalist revolution. But there are many things about this that are exactly on point with what's happening in the Soviet Union. Now, at that moment, it was like a signal to a whole part of American left who were backing Castro and said, let's not worry about this rights business. But in that first issue, regular issue, I must say, we took a position based on analysis of totalitarian behavior. People denied rights. So I feel that if there's a continuity in the different contributors, it's been concern about that.
I think about the question about whether or not we decided, I never thought of the arguments that way when he said 50-year argument. I didn't want to, how should I put it? Because I was discovering it as I went along, I didn't want to, almost, trivial is the wrong word, but categorize it as left or right. And because many of the political articles that you read now, I mean, I would think, you check on some that were written in the past, they really don't mean much it's one idea, or it's not as relevant. They're not as relevant today. Other articles that they wrote about, other articles that were in the review that you could pick up, first issue, you could pick up other issues in the past, dealing with subject matter that relates to what's fair. What's fair for a human being? How should a human being live? This is relevant, ultimately, over the left and right, I think. But that's only my view of things. Yes, the New York Review led to me picking up Dissent, Bertrand Russell's Dissent, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. An interesting issue at that time, because it pointed out about the missiles we had in Turkey, which to the populace, to the people who really weren't reading the New Yorker, reading I don't know, magazines or New York Reviews or whatever, we didn't know that. We just thought it was the missiles in Cuba against us, see, you know. And so these were, but the radicalism of the time, for me, was something that I was curious about, but never really interested. And so for me, it's always been about what's the fair thing, and who are we ultimately, and which world, which country system, how are the people living? How are they living? Is that how we judge if the system works or trying to work? I don't know, but I think it's a good indication. And so this for me was one thing, and I never really thought of doing sections of. We had the arguments on the Dick Cavett thing with Gore and Gore Vidal and Mailer. It's very, very charismatic in a way and enjoyable to watch and to really think of these things. I hear people talk like that too at the Bloody Town, Bloody Hall. You know, like fuck you, I am trying to, all this stuff. It's really fascinating, especially in the world of today. And so for me, that wasn't even a controversy. It was life at that time in New York, in America. It really was. And I'm sure in other places in the world too, but really, that's we arguing on the street corners that way. So for me, it was beyond right and left, and I think you certainly can make a film about the controversies and the arguments, more than the arguments, the controversies, but there's another film. It's another film. I just decided not to pursue that. David, what do you think?
Well, Bob says very clearly in the movie that, they wanted to question establishments. And we found that to be very true, that was the point of view of the publication. And that's something that we wanted to live up to. I mean, one of the last changes we made in the film was Avishai Margalit, towards the end. We felt maybe we had been a little easy on Israel, that, you have this suicide bomber that's very explicit. You have you have Yasmin al-Rashidi talking very explicitly about the Arab world and, what's going on in the dark side of the Arab Spring, I guess. But Israel, which is the most controversial topic for the review in a way over the last 30 years, that we hadn't maybe been quite so clear about it, and we put that piece of Avishai's review of Noam Chomsky's book about Israel, because once again, it's questioning that establishment, and he has to concede of some of the terrible things that have happened. So I don't know. I felt like that was that it's not left or right at the end of the day. It's questioning establishments.